We would like to invite Bachi and Shazia Ilmi on the stage, please. A village boy turns millionaire. An army captain becomes a toast of the town. A story of two men who turned hotels into India's only world-class industry. We have the eternal Bachi speaking with Shazia Ilmi on Dare to Change.
Thank you so much. Bachi, it's difficult to introduce you, and Bachi is one of those जो कहा जाता है ना, बहुत सुना होगा आपने कि किसी तारुफ की मोहताज वाकई में नहीं है. The greatest thing about Bachi, before I talk about the book she's written, the biography of Captain Nair, is that I'm personally a huge fan of hers. Somebody who's been in journalism and who's been an activist and then in active politics. You know, I have been following her writings, as I'm sure all of you do. And I think this is one of the fewest journalists that we have today who really have their loyalty to the viewer, to the reader, and and don't follow an agenda. The purity with which and the ethics with which you pursued your career, and it's really commendable. So a huge round of applause for Bachi. And one man in his time plays many parts. We are talking about Captain Nair. And Bachi has written this great book with great research, painstakingly collected though. And Bachi, why don't you start with your introduction?
Well, actually, we followed a professional star, so it's always difficult to follow an actor. But let me tell you, this is really a man who played all these parts in real life. So this short introduction, those who live till the age of 92 often have a ringside seat on history. Some even manage a role in shaping some of the drama that unfolds. But there are a few who dare to divide their world into several stages and stride across each of them with a performance to remember. Captain C.P. Krishnan Nair was one such serial player. Leftist and capitalist, freedom fighter, rationing overseer, soldier, promoter of humble handloom and manufacturer of Scottish lace. Finally, and most remarkably, the hotelier who redefined luxury. The child who could only get rice gruel for breakfast went on to dine with emperors.
Fabulous. Bachi, I was reading the book and you set the stage, you know, and we actually go to Kannur where everything is red, ideologically and otherwise. For me, it was difficult to comprehend and put together these two pictures. A boy, a Vanya boy in Kannur, born to such humble, modest origins, born to that family. And then he goes to create these symbols of luxury, like of that kind, opulence, where it shows, and it is larger than life. It's difficult to put these two images together. Like you said, he straddled these two worlds so beautifully, a leftist to an avowed capitalist, and he chose to dream. And this is exactly what you write about M.S. Oberoi.
Correct.
In that famous biography. So there is certain audacity in their entire ability to dream and dream big and get over even themselves and their own conditioning to reach there, and that also in a socialist era, so to speak.
Yes, yes. Okay, so these are really these two biographies I've written 20 years apart. 1992, M.S. Oberoi, Rai Bahadur, called Dare to Dream, and this thing called Capture the Dream, totally by chance, similar sounding headlines, but really true about both these people. So Rai Bahadur, M.S. Oberoi, born in this tiny, obscure hamlet called Bhaun, and then goes on to build hotels all over the world. Captain Nair, born to a really low-class Vanya family in Kannur. His mother is just a person who sells copra, and this little boy helps her. And then she uses her network to put him into a school. So shall I tell them the story of how the school? Yeah, because that really also his first act of audacity.
Yeah, it's unbelievable.
Yeah. So this boy has got into school, and this is a school run by the local Raja, the Chirakkal Vanya Raja, Valia Raja. And so the first day, the first year, in the annual day, the Raja himself comes, he's the chief guest. And this little Kannur boy who's sort of never really stepped out of his hamlet sees this apparition who really looks like a, character from Mahabharata who's come down. And he's bedazzled by what he looks like, the kind of speech that the Raja gives. So once the Raja goes back to his seat, this little boy, kind of just propelled by an inner force, goes up, to the stage and starts reciting this paean of praise, which is a little over the top, but the Raja is very chuffed by all the flattery that happens. And he says, "Oh, really? I will pay for this boy's education till the end of the time that he wants to study." So imagine how this little Vanya boy who could not even have dreamt of going to school but that's not the end of the story, because he says, okay, I'll pay for his education till as long as he wants to study. So he finishes school and then he wants to go to college. So then he goes back to the Raja, and then the Raja sees him enter, and the Raja kind of looks a bit awkward because the Raja has himself fallen on a few hard times, and little Krishnan Nair realizes, something's going wrong here. But he still says, "Sir, now I want to go to college." The Raja's word is the Raja's word, right? It's wrought in stone. So he says, "That's okay. I'm not very, I'm not like I was when I gave you the promise, but my word is the word. So here is my diamond ring. Take it to Bapalal, the jeweler in Madras, and it will finance your education, your college education." So the Raja actually takes off his diamond ring, and then he goes to Bapalal, the jeweler, who's a very, very sort of snooty jeweler, doesn't buy, second-hand jewelry. But when he hears the story and he says, "Chirakkal Valia Raja gave it, then I have to honor it." And that is how the boy manages a college education.
So destiny had a lot to do with both the hoteliers. If you look at Mr. Oberoi and if you look at Captain Nair, and they kind of defied their destinies and where they came from. There was a certain defiance.
Right, because I don't think, I think these are men who really carved their own destiny.
Yes.
And I think ultimately that is what you have to do. You can't sit back and say, "Ye to mera karm hai, main kya karu." You can't. You have to grab destiny by the forelock, just as you have to grab opportunity by the forelock. And that's what both these men did. Like you look at, I remember Rai Bahadur, I used to tell him, I said, "Rai Bahadur, you had a lot of luck." He said, "Excuse me, I didn't have a lot of luck. I made my own luck." And when you think about it, Shazia, I kind of realized this about Rai Bahadur, that all his fortunes were actually made on other people's misfortune. And not in a way that he exploited it, in a bad way. For instance, his father kind of died of cholera when he had gone to lay these railway lines. And so that's what made his mother, she could not take the taunts of her in-law home. And so she walked those miles back to her father's home. And that the father used to be a money lender in Punjab. And that is how, he got into the contact of all the rich fiefdoms of Maharaj, of Punjab. And so when he needed to bankroll his first hotel, he could go to them and ask for the money. In Calcutta, the Grand Hotel, that had been under a cloud because it had, had a big bout of cholera and epidemic. So the great, fantastic, Grand Hotel of Calcutta had lain under, covered with bed sheets, if you like. And Rai Bahadur is on his way back to Simla.
Yeah.
And he suddenly, a friend says, that hotel in Calcutta, it's up for sale. So he just changes his platform, takes a train, and goes to Calcutta and negotiates and to the Stephen Aratoon, who's the owner, and says, I'll buy this for this much. So then Stephen Harrington tells him, but then what about goodwill? Because Stephen Harrington is an Armenian, but paise banane wala. So he says, what do you mean goodwill? This hotel has got bad will, so you give me some money back. Then he builds this Bombay hotel, which he's put everything into, and he's paid this ridiculous amount of money for the land, which is still under the sea. It is yet to be reclaimed. Then, because he wants to build the tallest building, he has to make, window panes which withstand all those winds. He has to dig much deeper into the foundation because it is reclaimed land, and the sea is willing and always ready to reclaim it back. Yes. And after having spent these absurd amount, especially on the land, which is exactly what also happened to Captain Nair, because he had paid this ridiculous amount for the land in Delhi. And so this hotel, which, with Grand Hotel, he has made this so much money that he has to stuff it into mattresses because at night, he can't count it. There's no time.
Wow.
And he's really, so that is why he could pay for all these hotels. And now Bombay is turning the cash cow into the white elephant, right? Sure. But then the Beirut War happens. And the Beirut War then directs all the Arab people who used to go to Beirut for their nightlife, they come to Bombay. And not only that, the monsoon was the season when hoteliers swat flies, okay? But now the monsoon has become the star season, because the Arabs can't have enough of the rain that is pouring down, and his hotel is right on the sea. So there are all these Arabs flocking to his hotel.
So every adversity became a huge opportunity. Yeah. Coming to Captain Nair was really the captain of his fate, really. And the way he turned it around, his own destiny. You mentioned Madhavi Amma, his mother. Yes. So two women, his mother, Madhavi Amma, and of course his wife, Leela, they played such a huge role in his life. And when I read about the chapter on prawn pickle password, I think, so can you please link the dots between prawn pickle password and the Leela Hotel?
All right. Well, let me just quickly tell you this, that both Rai Bahadur and Captain Nair, their mothers and their wives played a great role in their life. Of course, Captain Nair was also a great ladies' man, okay? But Rai Bahadur, did have, let us say, informal mistresses, right? Nirlep Kaur, the love of his life, And I remember someone telling me, well, he didn't actually, marry her. So I said, no. So he said, so then she was non-stick Nirlep. But anyway, so to come back to...
Bachi has to be Bachi,
To Captain Nair. So, now his mother, she's this, this humble Kannur lady. But I think, she does understand the power of network, right? And, I mean, maybe it was subconscious, but, Captain Nair, he's not yet Captain Nair. Well, yes, he is Captain Nair. He's gone to Abbottabad and then Delhi to join the army. And she says, my son must be so homesick for Kannur. And VP Menon, who's like one of the most powerful men of the time, he was the right-hand man of Sardar Patel. So he has, worked with 3 viceroys. He knows all the Maharajas who has brought to the negotiating table. So, but VP Nair's second wife, who is a very formidable woman, and like a lot of Nair women. And so the mother says, please, will you take this prawn pickle, for my son? So this madam, and then she takes the sense to give her...
And Captain was a radio officer. I mean, he was in the army.
Officer in Abbottabad.
In Abbottabad.
Yeah. And so she says, no, but by now he's come to Delhi. Okay, so that means VP Menon is right there. So then she said, will you give it to him? So she takes and she summons this young man, and young man is sort of goes there, sees all these British officers, VP Menon's great house, and then he, gives the prawn pickle to the wife. I mean, the wife gives him the prawn pickle, and he's about to leave, but just then VP Menon's Rolls Royce rolls up. And then he says, no, you are to come in and you are to have lunch with us. And so VP Menon becomes the greatest patron, the door opener, if you like, of so I think
Yes.
we'd love to say the story of the lace at this point.
Yes, no, definitely. So it was like Leela proposed and Captain disposed. You know, it was so that love story is so beautiful. What was the fascination with lace and the need for Captain Nair to go all the way to Scotland and a man who's working with handlooms? So, and again, two very different images. You see handlooms and then lace. Again, and this is a man who does it all so well with so much elan.
Yeah.
So what's with that?
Well, okay, so now we come talk about Leela Nair. So Leela Nair was actually, didn't come from such a humble background. Her father was like really a leading figure of Kannur. He had set up the commerce, what do you call it, Chamber of Commerce over there, etc. And he sees this really self-assured girl, and then finally, and he sees her as a schoolgirl. But ultimately, afterwards, he proposes to her, and Leela is quite happy to, to be with him. And really, every step that he has taken, it is with Leela's prompting, except in reverse when he leaves the army, because she's just a young bride. She has come to Bombay and is working as the ADC to General Brar. And Leela looks at this thing and she says, you better leave this army because you're not going to spend the rest of your life saluting to orphans, all and sundry. So Captain Nair leaves the thing and he goes off and, does his own textile thing. Then Madam Leela sees lace. She just sees it. And she says, we must manufacture lace. Now, this Captain Nair has lived in Kannur. He's not have any clue about what lace is about. Yes, the nuns used to make lace in Kerala, but he's gone nowhere near the nuns making lace.
Yes.
But when Leela has a will, then Captain Nair has to find a way, right? So then he says, then VP Menon enters the stage and says, look, the only way to make lace is to import the looms which are only made in Scotland. So you better go and buy them there. But don't worry, I mean, I'll see that things happen. So fine, so Captain Nair and Leela Nair go there. They go to this manufacturer of these fancy lace looms, right? They're really big looms and, they take like 7 people to operate. And he goes up to Mr. Lawrence Mitchell and says, I'd like to buy your lace looms. So this British gentleman looks at him and says, but sir, I don't know you. How can I sell my looms to you? And who are you? So he says, well, maybe if you lend me may I borrow your phone and may I make a phone call? Maybe the person, who will speak to you might, tell you about my credentials. So he dials a number and hands the phone back to Lawrence Mitchell. And guess who is at the other end of the line? Lord Louis Mountbatten himself. So VP Menon has kind of said, look, this guy, my protege, is coming, and he's already met him. And poor Lawrence Mitchell, falls back and says, oh, yes, sir, please, certainly, here are the looms. And that is how he ends up making lace.
Fabulous, yeah.
This is really the wonderful thing about this book, about Rai Bahadur's book. It's just these stories, about their life, which kind of illustrate their audacity. It's, what the Hebrew word is chutzpah. And it's really this word that they all have. Rai Bahadur, thinks nothing of going up to the Quartermaster General and, while World War II has happened and said, let me billet your soldiers. Whatever you're paying for them, I will charge 25 paise less. So Quartermaster General says, fine. And he has the sense to take along his British general manager. Because Punjabi hai, lekin knows कि ये अंग्रेज साथ में आएगा तो फिर बात बन जाएगी.
काम हो जाएगा.
And so then he does that. And that's where he makes this money because, all the soldiers are passing through to the Burma front. And and the soldiers are passing, and every night the soldiernies are spending nights with the soldiers, and the morning, the captain, Rai Bahadur and his wife do the head count. Okay, these are the soldiers and these are the women who they've slept it, and where's the cash? And that's how he gets all that money. Even
Amazing
Captain
stories.
Nair, at 65, when he's already been this success, he's been the biggest exporter of ready-mades to America. Liz Claiborne, Gloria Vanderbilt, Tommy Hilfiger, you just name it. And he is supplying to all these labels. And at 65, he decides to set up hotels. And that too, he's this Johnny come lately, really. And he's taking on the aristocrats of the industry, the Oberoi and the Taj. Not only that, when he builds in Bangalore, he builds a hotel with the more rooms than the two hotels, combined together. And I remember this man who was at that time at Oberoi, and he says, someone down the road has gone mad. What is he doing with this hotel?
Yeah, it takes a certain insanity to think like that and make it happen. I met Captain Nair. This is, of course, he was at the Leela, and I had just checked in, and he was very abrupt in the way he spoke, and there was something the assurance of a self-made man, and he was very proud of it. You see, so he just met me and says, I see you, Anna Hazare movement. And he says, I see you. And he just said, have you eaten? He was just one of those people who would just, and then the fascination with flowers, that in the middle of the night, he would be looking at, tending to all the flower decorations at the Leela, and I was fascinated. So we spoke about Anna Hazare and the movement and the need for it, and flowers, and how he got them, where they got them from. So that meticulousness, and that it comes, and only, you have to be insane to some degree to be able to achieve it and make it happen day after day and create all these great careers for yourself and excel and actually crack it, literally, because you kept cracking it. So I want to ask you, first of all, what propelled you to write the book? And what is it about him which is the most amazing quality of Captain Nair? And of course, I mentioned politics because I had just given up my career to be part of Anna Hazare movement.
You did mention what was, whether by design or not.
We'll talk about politics later.
Not politics. I'm saying the fact that what was really his unique signature on the hospitality landscape were his gardens. But if you want, I will give you this inside story.
Yes.
And please do not take away from the fact that I did this book in 7 months. That please do not take away from the fact that there is not enough research in it. All right?
Yes.
So this thing is that the family came to me a day before the second lockdown and said, please salvage this book. It's going to be our father's birth centenary in February. This is March now, because the person who was commissioned to do the book was with Captain Nair, for years before he died. Captain Nair has died in 2014, but this man has not delivered anything, on this book. So I said, well, I really, don't want to do it. Though the person who came to me was Rajiv Kaul, who had kind of been at the Oberoi at that time. And he said that, look, I told the Nairs that if anyone will do this book and do it justice in this much time, please let's persuade her. So he came with an AV done by Vijay Amritraj. Now, Vijay Amritraj was his great friend. This is a lovely thing about Captain Nair, was he was age neutral. From his grandchildren to people, 10 years, 20, 30 years younger, it made no difference. So I looked at that AV, and it wasn't about the hotels. I've written about Oberoi. Who's going to match that, right? I've written about Fleury's. Who's going to match that? And so I said, no, not another hotel here. But then in this AV, Vijay Amritraj talks about his textile days. And he says he's the one who promoted bleeding Madras to the West. Now, I know that a lot of people here are more or less my generation, and this fabric, bleeding Madras, was the cult fabric of our youth. So I said, oh my God, this man promoted bleeding Madras. And so I said, I'm going to do this book. And then as the stories unfolded, of course, it became into a fabulous. So can I just say a little bit about Bleeding Madras?
Yes,
All
if you
right.
insist.
Yeah, so, a guy, Jacobson, he's this big textile importer, and he comes to the textile commissioner in India, Mr. Swaminathan, and says, I want to buy a whole lot of handloom. So Swaminathan puts him on to Captain Nair. Captain Nair, and so Jacobson says, give me a fabric that's unique and nobody really knows about. So Captain Nair thinks about this fabric that has been worn by the Kalahasti women of Madras, and it's sort of done with all these vegetable dyes, and those dyes are fixed with gingerly oil, mustard oil, which is why it's got this strange, smell. But the thing about it is that with each wash, you get a different fabric because the colors bleed. So when those colors bleed, I mean, what may start as a red and yellow check ends up as a yellow-red check and with green tinges to it. So anyway, he buys this, and Jacobson takes it back, and Brooks Brothers is fascinated by it. And they buy the whole lot, thousands and lakhs of yards of it, and turn it into their line. They make sports jackets, they make shorts, and everything, but forget to write the important line about bleeding. So when it is put in the washing, you get whites into the colors you've never seen. And naturally all hell breaks loose, all the court cases are filed. But Captain Nair comes out squeaky clean because he says, look, I told you about it. So then, of course, everyone kind of tones this down, pays whatever has to be paid. But then David Ogilvy, the great marketing guru, is put in charge of the campaign, and he turns weakness into strength. And so the strap line of it is guaranteed to bleed. And then that becomes into the selling point of Bleeding Madras.
So I mentioned his fascination with me being part of the Anna movement, which had just begun. And when I read the book and I see how deeply political he himself was. And he told me about his love and affection for Subhash Chandra Bose. And he was quite a believer. But even before that, whether it's A. Gopalan or V.P. Menon, and then Subhash Chandra Bose, can you take us through those pathways of history that he walked on?
Okay. Well, the later politics was very much about networking. He had his finger in every pie, literally as well, into every appam and into every stew and every pie that you can think of. But yes, his early influences were extremely political. So even as a college student, he came under the influence of A.K. Gopalan, this great communist leader. And A.K. Gopalan also immediately spotted this boy with this, reassurance and made him the leader, the student leader of the college. And so A.K. Gopalan took him to the 1938 Congress session in Haripur. And there he kind of saw Netaji Subhash Bose. And he was really fascinated by him. And then there was this little side story, which is in his autobiography.
Yes, I read that.
Malayalam autobiography, from which I got a lot of the early part, right? Because, but let me tell you again, that a man as vain a man as Captain Nair writes his own autobiography, which no publisher is going to question. And so you have to question every single line. So you have to really check out every single timeline and everything. So anyway,
about Subhash Chandra Bose,
so
and the little
Subhash Chandra
story.
Bose. So in this, he has this story where Subhash Chandra Bose is suddenly racked by fever. And everyone is really worried, abhi ye kya hone wala hai? He's our great leader. So at that time, Krishnan Nair kind of whispers to A.K. Gopalan that, look, back in Kannur, we have this home remedy that if you take the breast milk of a woman and soak clothes in it and put it on his fevered brow, he will get well. Now, I don't know what the connection is, or whether just the fact of having the breast milk of some Buxton Nair woman immediately makes the fever flee, but whatever happens, it seems to work. and he's revived, right? But not that at that point, a little Kannur boy or even A.K. Gopalan can go back and say that. But when he goes to Abbottabad, that's where he is this wireless officer, and he then comes into the influence of Khan Abdur Ghaffar Khan, and through that Sheikh Abdullah, and after that Farooq Abdullah, and right then to Omar Abdullah, and he really thrills, to the speeches of Netaji from Radio Sholen, which is in Singapore. And he really says that for him, the hero of the freedom struggle was always Netaji.
Yes. Tell us more about that. Tell us more about Netaji. What did he take it to a level where he wanted to do more with Netaji or work with him?
No, because you see, Netaji was by then, in Singapore and, doing his own thing. This guy was here and he was in Abbottabad. And at that time, he in fact actually wanted to become a sannyasi, And so then they went to the guy who later became Swami Shivanand. And they both went to this other sannyasi, he and his friend. And that sannyasi kind of saw the friend and said yes, and he later became Swami Shivanand. But he looked at Captain Nair and he said, this man's destiny is not about sitting, in Padmasan on some river. And he says, you will be the Karma Yogi. And that is why he said, please go away. You are not going to, destined to be the sannyasi. So then he went and really then carved the Karma Yogi path.
And he was very much a Karma Yogi. For instance...
having said that, he really did get into a lot of, for instance, the Dalai Lama. The Dalai Lama and he were the greatest of friends.
Yeah.
The greatest of friends.
I remember that.
They used to have these little jokes between each of them. Oh, I am older, you are older. And he thought nothing. So Dalai Lama is visiting. Let him open the staff canteen.
Dalai Lama was always being brought in to do something or the other, some events.
And his staff said, no, he's the Dalai Lama,
His Holiness.
Let us start something else which is worthy of the Dalai Lama opening. And all his disciples would come into the hotel and, squat there, and he'd be very happy. And then, the lotus, the Padma, which is in Buddhist philosophy, that was so much part of his decor. And also the Princess of Thailand gave him this rare standing lotus. So his lily pond, in the thing has got these standing lotuses. And when he died, the first time that the Dalai Lama visited, he just went up with this lotus garland, and you could, as Rajiv Kaul said, you could almost see the smile on the portrait of Captain Nair, that his old friend has come back with the one tribute that both of them valued so much.
Bachi, my last question to you, because we'll have to leave some time for questions. Just like you have been, and I'm talking about you, and Bachi hates that, which is why I'm putting her on the spot. You have defied all the regimes, and your humor you've never broke nonsense from any regimes whatsoever. And you haven't let any of the changing dispensations affect you in any way. And, and you have defied them all. And to retain your humor, your wit, your sharp, caustic glance at things, political view. Captain Nair, and he has spanned, eras, decades, different things. And he never let any ideology, left or right, come in the way of, I don't want to say his greatness, but what he set out to do. And in a way, he also believed in his own myth, because he kept it going. So the man did believe in his myth, and it's very much part of who he is and what he managed to create.
Yeah, so actually, well, Shazia, you're going into little dangerous territory when you say with every regime, because the current regime, which you are part of, has so increased my bandwidth that it's not funny. But I have used Shazia who told me, no, it's not really true. So the next time I write something which my editor will not let pass, I am going to tell the editor, please speak to my friend Shazia and then clear it or don't clear it.
Yeah. And we were discussing this, and in fact, yesterday I told you that when I was an anchor with Star, and how I was told also by the then Congress regime not to touch Pratibha Patel's son and various stories. So I have my own stories to share, and I have also, but I'm not talking about my...
So Captain Nair, like his politics, he was ultimately a businessman, and so all businessmen have to kind of, they have to be politics neutral, because you don't know, one man today is up, the next day he's down, and the one who's down today is going to be up the next day. So they always have their irons in every fire. But having said that, Captain Nair was still, there was a lot of genuineness, to his thing. So like the fact that, okay, I never met the man, right? But Shazia, somebody else. I think everyone who I talked to, everyone has met Captain Nair except the person who ultimately ended writing up the book, right?
It's a great book, huh?
Yeah, and in a way I'm glad, because Captain Nair being Captain Nair, I think that book would not have got written, because every day he would have come up with a new story, which is exactly what happened with the book that I wrote immediately after, but that's another story. That's for the next Litfest. And but he was such a people person, he really did. And his own granddaughter said that, when, like he was involved with everything. So yes, when the hotels were being planned, he was there. When the food was being planned, he was there. But when it came to the marketing, he was right in the center of it. So he really did.
Great. We will, who will help us with the questions? Yeah. So, but, well, while we're waiting for them, I think...
No, he's right, Shazia, he's right. You can ask.
No, because there was a lot of applause when she talked about the present regime, and because I have not got a space at all in this entire fest to speak about my experiences as a journalist for many years, so I hope there will be a session to also talk about my side of the story and why I'm part of this regime.
See this
sometime.
politician, how she's pushed in her agenda.
No, this politician did not pursue agenda, but we saw some politicians pursue their agendas by hijacking Kasauli Litfest, which, anyway. So, yeah, questions?
Hi, Bachi. Here, right here. Hello.
Yes.
Hi. What is the book that you said you've just written, which is for another Litfest? Here.
Okay, so this is a book on the Chawlas, Ravi Chawla of Ravissant. So that's the book. I kind of really began working back to back with this, because the two people who kind of put me into this also, and there are two people I admire a great deal, Rajiv Kaul and Mahmud Khan. They said, here's another man who's as much of a story, so please do this. So it was really terrible, because I'm halfway through Ravi Chawla's book when Captain Nair's book gets published, and then I'm pulled in for the interviews, and like I'm totally disoriented. I said, am I going to suddenly in the middle of Captain Nair, I'm going to start talking about Ravi Chawla, So that was the book.
Any other questions?
Anybody else with the next? No.
Yes.
Thanks, Bachi. What a fun session, really. I'm dying to know more about this man now. And thanks, Shazia, for leading it through. A question is, when are you going to write a book about a powerful woman?
Yeah, it's about time. About a powerful woman.
Powerful
All
woman.
these men in
I
the stories,
see.
oh my God.
Oh,
no.
absolutely. Can I start with myself?
Absolutely. Good one. I like that. Yeah.
Whom would you like to write it for you?
Why should anyone? Well, I think I'd like to. Well, I think maybe someone should write it, because I think you can you can really swing both ways, which are not that you can then tend to get carried away, or you can say, oh my God, how can I? And frankly, really, I mean, people do say that. Well, to be very polite about it, that I have straddled. I mean, if I've been 50 years in journalism, and have really been witness to a lot of movements. Maybe not, certainly not politics, but certainly a lot of social movements, feminism. I've written so much on HIV/AIDS. I've written really about media, the things in which where media changed. My grandfather started a paper in Calcutta, a Gujarati English paper in Calcutta in 1917, right? My parents edited that paper. I grew up in the press. So I have been from the time of hand setting, right? My grandfather sets up this Gujarati paper in Calcutta. Who knows the language? He imports from Gujarat, Bombay, all the typesets. He trains Callow, Bihari boys in the language and in hand setting. And then, so I know hand setting. Then I've gone through linotype. Then I've got, that is hot metal. Then I've gone through digital. So really the whole media metamorphosis that has happened. I think if I were to write, that is what I would write about. Because I would never write about my personal life because, there's a lot of excitement in it, but it would embarrass, it would hurt, and I don't think I'm in that space where I want to hurt people. Truly, I'm not saying this, but that's not been the kind of journalist I am. I think even my humor has not been malicious ever.
Never, never. Without malice. Without malice.
Without malice.
And
without malice.
Without malice. And it's been a great session. Bachi, you always inspire. It's wonderful. Your words regale and regenerate always. Thank you so much. I'm dying to read the book, and I hope you do mention emergency.
She's
and
not
what happened
read the
at that
book,
time.
okay? She's not read the book.
So we'll know a little bit more about other dispensations and how they treated the press. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bachi and Shazia.